When you think about it, there's only one guy that can destroy democracy. It says when you contemplate the end of democracy in America, what kind of person comes to mind? And who do you think will bring it about? Maybe you picture a sinister billionaire in a bespoke suit, slipping brown envelopes to politicians. Maybe your nightmare is a rogue general hijacking the nuclear football. Maybe you think of a jack-booted thug leading a horde of men in white sheets, all carrying burning crosses, meaning the KKK. Here is what you probably don't imagine: an affable, self-made Midwesterner, one of those goofy, failed businessmen who makes his own infomercials. A crack addict, no less, who laughs good-naturedly when jokes are made at his expense. Um, a man who will talk to anyone willing to listen, and to many who aren't. A philanthropist, a good boss, not really. Um, a fake patriot, or basically a patriot or a fake one, who may be doing more damage to American democracy than anyone since Jefferson Davis. Basically, Anne Applebaum had met Mike Lindell, the CEO of My Pillow, in the recording studio that occupies the basement of Steve Bannon's stately Capitol Hill townhouse, a few blocks away from the Supreme Court. The same Supreme Court that will, according to Mike Lindell, decide 9-0 in favor of restating Donald Trump to the squadancy sometime in August or possibly September, which won't happen. Basically, Ann Applebaum made it through the entirety of the Trump squadancy without once having to meet Bannon. But here he was recording his War Room podcast with Lindell. Bannon has been decomposing in front of our eyes for some years now, and basically, Ann Applebaum can report that this process continues to take its course. She walked in during a break, and the two men immediately gestured for her to join the conversation and sit at the table with them and listen in on headphones. She demurred. And then that's when Bannon said, Ann Applebaum, you should have stuck to writing books, and Gulag was a great book. How long did it take you to write it? In the room adjacent to the basement studio, an extra large image of a New York Times front page hung on the wall, featuring a picture of Bannon and the headline "The Provocator," a bottle of bioactive silver hydrosol, and whatever the fuck it was sat on the desk. The big screen TV was tuned to MSNBC, and this wasn't surprising. In his podcast, Bannon carries on a kind of dialogue with Rachel Maddow, playing her sound bites and then offering his own critique. Later, Lindell had said that if it weren't for attacks by the Democrats, by which he means political, the Daily Beast, and presumably her, his message would never get out because faux news ignores him. Bannon, too, lives outside the faux news bubble these days. Instead, he inhabits an alternate universe in which every minute of every day seems to be entirely devoted to discussion and analysis of electoral fraud, with just a little time devoted to selling wellness products and vitamins that, despite his claims, won't actually cure COVID-19 at all. Bannon's podcast, which he says has millions of listeners, it is ranked 59th on Apple Podcasts, so he might be right. But it is populated by full-time conspiracy theorists, some of whom you have heard, and some of whom you probably haven't. Um, like like Trump won the fucking landslide, Navarro, Rudy Kaludi, Garland Favorito, Willis at Tree Killer 35, Sonny Borelli, the Pizzagate propagator, Jack Posobiec, and of course Lindell. Bannon calls them up one by one to report on the current status of the Trump reinstatement campaign and related fake scandals, and there are daily updates. The guests talk fast and loud. It is very exciting. On the day I was at the studio, Bannon was gloating about how the current president Joe Biden was now defending his own legitimacy, and we are going to spring the trap around you, sir. He kept telling people to lawyer up. Even in this group, Lindell stands out, and not only is he presumably much richer than Garland, Favorito, and Willis, he is willing to spend his money on a lost cause. My Pillow has long been an important. The My Pillow guy has long been an important advertiser on faux news, so much so that even Trump noticed Lindell. That guy is on TV more than I am, but has since widened its net. The My Pillow spent tens of thousands of dollars advertising on the fake news channel Newsmax just in the week following the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Um, and now Lindell is spending more money on just advertising. Last January on the 9th, he says carefully, placing the date after the 6th, a group of still unidentified concerned citizens brought him some computer data bullshit. And these were allegedly packet captures, intercepted data proving that the Chinese Communist Party altered electoral results in all 50 states, which isn't true. And this is a conspiracy theory more elaborate than the purported Venezuelan manipulation of voting machines, and more improbable than the allegation that millions of supposedly fake ballots were mailed in, and it's more baroque than the belief that thousands of dead people voted. And this one has potentially profound geopolitical implications. And that's why Lindell has spent money, a lot of it, tens of millions, he said, validating the packets, and it's why he's planning to spend a lot more starting on August 10th, that he is holding a 3-day symposium in Sioux Falls because he admires South Dakota's gun-toting Governor Kristi Noem, where the validators, whoever they may be, will present their results publicly. He has invited all interested computer scientists, university professors, and elected federal officials and foreign officials, reporters, and editors to this symposium. He has booked, he says variously, 1,000 hotel rooms or all the hotel rooms in the city to accommodate them all. But as of Wednesday, Booking.com was still showing plenty of rooms available in Sioux Falls. And wacky though it may seem for a failed businessman to invest so much in a conspiracy theory, there are important historical precedents. Think of Olof Ashberg, the Swedish banker who helped finance the Bolshevik revolution, allegedly melting down the bars of gold that Lenin's comrades stole in the train robberies and reselling them unmarked on European exchanges. Or Henry Ford, whose infamous anti-Semitic tract, The International Jew, was widely read in Nazi Germany, and it was included by Hitler himself. And plenty of successful, wealthy people think that the knowledge of production technology or private equity gives them clairvoyant insight into politics. But Ashberg, Ford, and Lindell represent the extreme edge of that phenomenon. Their business, but Ashberg and Ford's business success and Lindell's failed gives them the confidence to promote malevolent conspiracy theories, and that means it reaches a wider audience. In the case of Ashberg and Ford, this had tragic real-world consequences, and Lindell hasn't created the Ford-level havoc yet, but the potential is there. Along with Bannon, Collodi, and the rest of the conspiracy posse, he is helping create profound distrust in the American electoral system, and in the American political system, and in the American public health system, and ultimately in American democracy. The eventual consequences of their actions may be a genuinely stolen or disputed election in 2024, and political violence on a scale that the U.S. hasn't seen in decades. You can fucking mock Lindell all you want, dismiss him, or call him a fucking crackhead, because that's what he is. But none of this will seem particularly funny when we truly have an illegitimate squatter in the White House and a total breakdown of law and order. Lindell had agreed to have lunch with Applebaum after the taping, but where to go? She didn't think it would be much fun to take someone inclined to shout about rigged voting machines and fake COVID cures to a crowded bistro on Capitol Hill, because Lindell is famously worried about Chinese communist influence. And basically, she thought that he would like to pay homage to the victims of Chinese oppression, so he booked a Uyghur restaurant. This proved to be a mistake. For one thing, the restaurant, the excellent Dolan Uyghur in D.C.'s Cleveland Park neighborhood, was not at all close to Bannon's townhouse, and getting there required a long and rather uncomfortable drive in Lindell's rented black SUV. He talked about packet captures the whole way, and one hand on the steering while the other holding up a phone showing Google Maps. And once he got there, he did it much like the food. He picked at his chicken kebabs and didn't touch his spicy fried green beans. And more to the point, he didn't understand why we were there in the first place. But he had never heard of the Uyghurs. Basically, Applebaum told him that there were Muslims who were being persecuted by Chinese communists. And no, he said, like Christians. And basically, Applebaum said, yes, like Christians. He kept talking at the restaurant, a kind of stream of consciousness accounts of the packet captures his mistreatment at the hands of the media and the Better Business Bureau, the dangers of the COVID-19 vaccines, and the wonders of oleandrin, a supplement that he says he and everyone else at MyPillow takes, and that he says is 100% guaranteed to prevent COVID-19. No, it's not. And all of these points, he is utterly impervious to any argument of any kind. Basically, Applebaum asked him hypothetically on August 10th, if it turns out that other experts disagree with his experts and declare that his data doesn't mean what he thinks his data means. This, he said, was impossible. It couldn't happen. I don't have to worry about that. Do you understand that? You do understand I've been attacked? Yeah, bullshit. He basically says he has 2,500 employees and he's been attacked every day. Yeah, bullshit. Do you look like... Basically, Lindell says I look like a stupid person. Yes, you do. Basically, he says I'm doing this for my health. Yeah, the you're doing this so you can get your crack. Basically, he says I had better things to do. Yeah, being fucking retarded. These guys, he said these guys brought me this, and I owe it to the United States, to all, whether it's a Democrat or Republican or whatever. It's to bring this forward to our country. I don't have to answer all that question because it's not going to happen. This is non-subjective evidence. The opprobrium and rancor he has brought down upon himself for trying to make his cases are in Lundell's mind. Further proof that it is true, which it's not. Stalin once said that the emergence of opposition signified the intensification of a class struggle. And this is Lundell's logic too. If lots of people object to what you're doing, then it must be right. The contradictions deepen as the ultimate crisis draws clear, as the old Bolshevik used to say. But there is a distinctly American element to his thinking too. The argument from personal experience and the evidence acquired on the journey from crack addict to CEO, the special kind of self-confidence that many self-made men acquire, along with the riches these are native to our shores. Lundell is quite convinced, for example, that not only did China steal the election, even though they didn't, but there is a communist agenda in this country more broadly. Basically, Applebaum asked him what that meant. He basically said, communists, take away your right to free speech. You just told me that what they were doing to these people, he meant the Uyghurs. He says, I've experienced it firsthand more than anyone in this country. The government had taken his freedom away, put him in a re-education camp. He says, I don't see anybody arresting you, Applebaum said. He became fucking annoyed, and Lundell became fucking annoyed. Basically, he says, okay, I'm not talking about the government. He says, I'm talking about social media, and why did they attack me? And why did bots and trolls attack all of my vendors? I was the #1 selling product for every outlet in the United States. Every single one of them dropped like flies. You know why? Because bots and troll groups were hired. And they were hired to attack while now done investigations. They come out of a building in China. Yeah, bullshit. It is true that there has been some organized backlash against My Pillow, which is indeed no longer stocked by Bed Bath & Beyond because most of the Bed Bath & Beyond stores closed, sent to Kohl's and other retailers. But I suspect that this reaction is every bit as red, white, and blue as Lundell himself. While plenty of Americans oppose Lundell's open promotion of both election and vaccine conspiracy theories, and they are perfectly capable of boycotting his company without the aid of Chinese bots. Lundell's lived experience, however, tells him otherwise. Just like his lived experience tells him that COVID-19 vaccines will kill you and oleandrin won't. But lived experience always outweighs expertise, and nobody can argue with that. And what you feel to be true, and Lundell feels that the Chinese stole the election, which they didn't, but it sent bots to smear his company and are seeking to impose communism on China, or basically on America. Although he describes the packet captures as cyber forensics, indisputable, absolute, irreversible proof of Chinese evildoing, Lundell is more colorful about evidence that isn't non-subjective. And when Applebaum asked him how exactly Joe Biden's presidency was serving the interest of the Chinese Communist Party, for example, his reasoning became more circuitous. He didn't want to say that Biden is himself a communist because he's not. Instead, when Applebaum asked for evidence of communist influence on Biden, he said this: Inauguration Day, I'll tell you, Inauguration Day, he laid off 50,000 union workers. That doesn't mean that he's a communist. Boom, pipeline gone. The old Democrat Party wouldn't lay off union workers. Maybe not. But in other words, the evidence of Joe Biden's links to the Chinese Communist Party was his decision to close the Keystone XL pipeline. And similarly convoluted reasoning has led him to doubt the patriotism of the Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, as well as Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, all of whom denied the existence of serious electoral cheating in their states because there wasn't any. Basically, Lundell said his personal opinion is that Brian Kemp is somehow compromised and maybe he could be blackmailed or in on it or whatever. He says, I also believe that Raffensperger is in on it along with Brian Kemp. And basically, and Applebaum asked in on what? He says in on whatever is going on. He asked if he meant the Chinese takeover of America was Raffensperger pro-China. And Lundell's dumbass believes that he's pro-China. That's because he's fucking retarded. That's what crack does to you, and crack is whack. Well, if you like the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel where I've been RBW King. And also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And thanks for listening.